So a few days ago, I was looking for something to watch on YouTube, and I was just going through various channels I watch, and I decided to check out Basic Bytes. I've watched most of his videos, and he's got a super awesome YouTube channel, and there were a few videos that I hadn't seen yet. And one of those was one where he was exploring the Commodore 64 programs pack, and in that he just had the disc and not the manual and the packaging and stuff that came with it. And he was talking about how he'd love to see that, and I just so happen to have that. So here is the Commodore 64 program pack. It comes like this cardboard folder. Here's the back. Commodore computer. It's got a Canadian address on the back. Copyright 1982. And it says this contains over 30 programs. They will help you learn, help you compose music, help you introduce you to machine language, have fun, and much more. Utilities, graphics, sound, game, education, personal, blah, 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 blah. They will introduce you to the Commodore 64 and its companion, the 1541 disk drive. To the best of our knowledge, this disk is public domain. Any questions regarding the programs, contact Commodore. Over 30 programs. No, there's not. There's actually only 22 programs, even though there's like, I think 31 files on the disk or something like that. But there's only actually 22 individual applications. Here's the front. This is from the fairly early days of the Commodore 64. Tell by the design language, it's sort of like the silver with the white stripes, which was used a lot more with like VIC-20 documentation and packaging, as you can see. Same sort of design language. But they did use this on some early 64 stuff. Here's another piece of Commodore documentation that uses that similar silver and white design. I really like it. They're using it around 81, 82 or so. I think by 83 it was mostly gone. But anyway, sidetracked. So this would have been included with the Commodore 1541 disk drive. There's also a later version of the packaging where it came in this plastic binder-like thing. And when we open it up here, we've got two different discs inside. On the right here, we have the Commodore 64 Program Pack Manual and the Commodore 64 Program Pack disc itself. And then we've got the Commodore 1541 test/demo disc. It's also just sort of like the same package that was included with the 1541. We're mainly going to be focusing on the program pack. I might do a video later on the test and demo disc, the 1541, but we're going to focus on the Commodore 64 program pack. That was interesting to note that the disk sleeve for the test program and the program pack are different. That leads me to maybe theorize that maybe these discs weren't included together, and the package was supposed to be like this, with the disc in one side and the manual in the other side, which makes sense, but it also makes sense that these two discs would be included together with the 1541, so I don't know, I'm pretty sure they were included together. And I'm sure you guys are dying to know, what does it smell like? Well, it doesn't really smell like anything. There's a slight hint of like musty basement. Paper smells a little bit like dust. Yeah, it surprisingly doesn't really smell like anything. There's a slight like old papery smell on the inside of this folder. So here's what that mysterious manual looks like that Basic Bytes mentions not being able to find. I will scan this and put it online. So yeah, it just has like a listing for all different programs on the disk sorted by type, and then like some instructions and whatnot for using the various programs on the disk, which is pretty handy since for a few of the programs you pretty much need this manual if you ever want to figure out how to use them. What does the manual smell like? Okay, the manual has a pretty prominent like old paper smell. Yeah, it smells like a lot of my other manuals, actually. So anyway, I figured I'd give you a bit of a brief rundown of the various programs that are on this disk.
Looking at the directory for the disk, you might notice something odd. And that is that some of the file names start with spaces, and some of them do not. And you'll see why in a sec. So let's go ahead and load the first file on the disk, which is this file browser program called Directory Assistance version 64. I'm sure this isn't the 64th version, this is just, file assistance program for the 64. And this is just like a file browser program that lets you view all the different program files on a disk. Except not all the files on the disk are actually being displayed. It only shows actual runnable programs. The other files are essentially supplementary files that the other programs load when you're using those other programs. And those ones are the ones that have the space in the file name. So it only shows the ones that don't have the space in the file name. To launch any of these programs, you just type the number next to the program name and hit enter. This first program is called 1541 Backup, and it's essentially just a disk copier program. There's not a whole lot to talk about here. The second program is called Amrot Tables, and it's essentially just a loan calculating program. And it prompts you with an interest rate, how many times it compounds in a year, the number of payments every year, and finally the amount of the loan. Oh, and as well as how many years you have to repay the loan. And that will output a table telling you each payment that you will need to make each month in order to pay off the loan. And I do promise you that the software on this disk does get a lot more interesting. This next one is called Artillery, and it's a game, obviously, and it prompts you for an angle and then how much power to throw this little dot, ball, bomb sort of thing at the other player, and it just goes back and forth between the two players, and your goal is to try to take out the other player. It's actually pretty hard. And I ended up just going against myself because I don't really have any friends to play with. This next program is where things start to get a little bit more interesting. It's called Bits, Bytes, Peeks, and Pokes. And it's like a tutorial program that is basically designed to teach you the concept of binary numbers and registers and like peeking and poking. Got a few things to say about this. First thing is that I find the Commodore logo spitting out the letters to be kind of charming and interesting. Something that's not so charming is the color scheme. The text colors are constantly changing, and some of them aren't too bad. The green and brown background isn't really that good, but when there's gray text on it, it's okay. But like when there's, say, brown background with light blue text, or even worse, pink or orange, that is just absolutely awful, and who thought that color scheme was good? Because it looks like crap. I found this program pretty interesting, actually, and I decided to just record it, and I'll upload a full unedited video of this program in its entirety as a separate little video. This next program is just a calendar. So it prompts you what year you want the calendar to be. And yes, it is Y2K compliant, so I can do like 2023. It'll ask you for the month. Let's do June, since that's the month that I'm recording this. It'll ask, do you want a marker on a date? And I'm recording this on the 22nd, so I'll select that. And it prints out the calendar for this month with the marker on the date that we selected. We can also type all into the month field, and it'll generate a calendar for the whole year, and then we can scroll through month by month. I do question how useful this program actually is, since you can't like print out the calendars or anything, nor can you enter in reminders and save it to disk or anything like that. Next up is the character editor, and this program is pretty self-explanatory. It allows you to create your own Commodore 64 character sets, so you can use this for doing like character graphics, or creating your own fonts and whatnot for various programs you might want to make. And yeah, it's a pretty fully functional character editor. One thing I really like about this program is it gives you a preview of the character you're editing in every single color. So as you can see, there's our character in all 16 colors of the Commodore 64. And we can change the background color to see how our characters look with various color combinations. And speaking of color combinations, our next program is called Color Test. This is an extremely simple program that just shows you all the different colors of the Commodore 64. And you can change the background color. And this can actually be really handy for figuring out, what would be a good color combination for your program. I'll probably use this in the future, picking optimal color combinations for my programs. This next one is called Concentration, and it's just that. It's everyone's favorite matching game. I actually do seriously enjoy this game. The next one is called Demo Joystick, and it just locks up on me. I can't get it to work, so I guess I can't show you that one, but it didn't really sound all that interesting. It's just a basic joystick test program. This next program is called Dump, which is kind of a funny name. But anyway, it just gives you a hex dump of really any file you want. You just load it up, it prompts you for a file name. Let's do the menu browser program, and then it'll just output a hex dump of that file. This next program is called High Res Loader, and most of these programs are really nothing spectacular. They're pretty primitive, and even by Commodore 64 standards, but you do have to keep in mind that all these programs were developed in the very early days of the Commodore 64. These programs were likely some of the very first ever pieces of software made for the Commodore 64, even if they were really nothing spectacular or really all that impressive even back then. But this next program would have been pretty impressive to see back in like 1982, 1983, and it displays a bitmap image of some random girl's face. It's in high-res mode with lots of dithering. And yeah, this looks pretty good. It's definitely been really cool to see on a computer back around 82, 83 when this disc was distributed. So yeah, one of the cooler programs on this disc, I think. At least for the time. This next program is also pretty cool. It's simply called Labyrinth, and it starts off by asking you for some dimensions for a maze, and then it generates said maze and briefly shows it on the screen, and then it switches to first person view, and you can move around the maze entirely in first person, and you have to try and escape the maze. This reminds me a bit of that Monster Maze game on the ZX81. So yeah, also definitely one of the cooler programs on this disc, I have to say. This next program is called Lemonade Stand, and it's a game where you have to try and run a lemonade stand. And it largely focuses on budgeting. And you just have to try to run a lemonade stand for 10 weeks during the summer. This next program is pretty simple and self-explanatory. It's called Load Address, and it prompts you for a file name. And we'll just go with the menu program again. And then it'll just tell you the load address for that program. So it just reads the header on the file, and then just tells you the memory address that it is to be loaded into. The next one is simply called Mortgage, and it's similar to the Amrot Tables program that you saw earlier, except it's for mortgages, and it's basically the same thing. Just calculates mortgage payments based on the parameters you enter, and that just generates this big table. The next program is called Organ, and this one's pretty cool. It basically turns the top two rows of your Commodore 64 keyboard into a musical keyboard, and you can select between different voices, change the octave, change the instrument, and you can even change the tuning. And I believe this will actually work with the Incredible Music keyboard, that keyboard overlay that you can snap on your 64, but if I had one of those, I'd try it, but I don't, unfortunately, and I'm pretty sure it'll work with that. And of course, it sounds really cool when you just mash random keys. This next one is called Snoppy Math, and I'm not sure if they totally got the rights to use that character. I kinda have my doubts, but it's cute anyway. Let's select the hardest difficulty. Okay, maybe we should not select the hardest difficulty. Let's try something easier. The objective here is it's really easy. It's basically just meant for like 2-year-olds. There's like a number line, and then it shows 2 points in the number line. They have to enter the difference between those two numbers. And if you get it wrong, Snoopy's doghouse gets shot, I guess. And if you enter it right, you take down some enemy of some sort. And yes, I did mess up first time on the easiest skill, and I'm not proud of it. Okay, so we are almost done here, and this last one is called Songs. This was created by the one and only Jim Butterfield, and it's a neat little demo of the SID chip. It starts by giving us a little menu. Press 1 for Yankee, press 2 for Dixie, and it just plays these little tunes. The next one is called Sound Effects, and it's also a cool little demo of the SID chip. We've got a selection of 8 different sound effects: alien, bell, bomb, clap, gunfire, pong, ray gun, and siren. Okay, that last one was a little hideous sounding, but overall these are pretty neat little sound effects, and it's definitely been pretty cool to hear coming from a computer back in 1982. The second last program on the disk is the Sprite Editor, and this is pretty self-explanatory. It's basically just like the character editor from earlier, except for sprites. And it's a pretty decent sprite editor. Not quite as nice as the one that came built into the Commodore 128, but still pretty decent. And it's a lot easier than doing it by hand. The final program on this disc is Jim Butterfield's legendary Supermon 64. Although this version is a bit different than the version I typically use, Supermon version 1.0, I've mainly just used Supermon Plus for my Commodore 64 machine language monitor needs. But this version, well, it changes the screen colors, and it's missing a couple of handy things, mainly like the text preview on the right side, which is handy for looking for strings in memory and in ROM. But other than that, it's a pretty decent, fully functional machine language monitor. It's very similar to what was included with the later Commodore Plus 4 and Commodore 128 computers. So it's great for looking at memory, hunting through memory, and for entering in small, simple assembly language programs. So anyway, that's just about it for the program pack disc. Thanks for watching and have a great day. I'll have a link to where you can download an image of the disc as well as a PDF of the manual in the video description. So, I loaded the disc back up again to get some more B-roll, And I noticed something, and that's that there is an additional file there that wasn't there before, just simply titled Mystery with a winking face. I have no idea how this file could have possibly gotten there. The disk is write protected. As you can see, it's got the little foily tape thing over the write protect notch, so there's no way, and nobody's been like messing with my computers or anything, so I have no idea how this file got onto this disk. It's just like it magically appeared. And honestly, I'm kind of creeped out, so honestly, I'm kind of freaked out right now, but there's really only one way to find out what it is, and that is to go ahead and load it, so let's see what horrible things await us. Oh man! I should have known.